Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community. Now this time next week, we'll be doing a deadline stream at this time ahead of game week 25, but obviously with no FPL deadline this week, it's a late evening, or early evening I should say, Ask James live stream rather than the usual lunchtime stream, because I had to make my way back from my glories in Liverpool last night, which obviously were not glories. Ask James next week, by the way, is likely to be early in the morning because it is a Friday deadline next week. Let's get the announcement out of the way just for those who might be living under a rock. Obviously Newcastle and Liverpool have reached the Carabao Cup final. Therefore, that means Aston Villa and Liverpool will double in game week 25, the upcoming game week of which the deadline is next Friday. Aston Villa will face Ipswich at home and Liverpool at home. Liverpool will face Wolves at home and Aston Villa away. It means, therefore, Arsenal and Chelsea and Fulham v Tottenham stay in their scheduled slots of blank game week 29. No date confirmed as yet for the Newcastle Crystal Palace fixture that will be postponed from the game week 29 weekend of the Carabao Cup final, but as I've been saying for a number of weeks, isn't definitively a blank as yet. It could still go in game week 29 until it is either given a new date or until at least one of Crystal Palace or Newcastle reach the FA Cup quarter-finals. The FA Cup fifth round is after game week 27. Right, that's the strategy stuff out of the way. We obviously will do a full updated chip strategy podcast for you on Monday as well after the weekend's FA Cup fourth round ties. I'll be answering questions going up to 7 p.m. UK time, or as it's obviously a bit quieter with no FPL deadline this weekend, if I get through all the questions before that, I suspect I probably won't. At timestamp this, we're not long gone. 6 p.m. UK time on Friday, February the 7th. All right, first up is Hasselbank's win, and he's trying to test me straight away. He says, it's Tottenham. When did Tottenham ever win a big game? Jamie Carragher's comments last night. Tottenham are never a team that turns up when it matters. What needs to change? Will you say Levy out? So we obviously didn't beat Liverpool in the first leg. We obviously didn't win 4-0 at Manchester City. Okay. I saw Carragher's comments. I think, unfortunately, the people at Sky need to go for their headlines these days because the click seems to be just as important for them. And I also think it's just a note on Jamie Carragher. I respect massively as an analyst. I think he's probably the best in the business, actually. But he seems to have decided a couple of months ago that he is going to absolutely tear into Tottenham every opportunity there is a bad result. He's decided it just can't work under Ange Postecoglou. That's fine, but you're going to get that consistency from him. And I suppose, you know what, as an analyst, you should be consistent. Unless, of course, you're sitting next to Thierry Henry and therefore you don't want to dig out an Arsenal player. But then when Thierry Henry's not sitting next to you, you may want to dig an Arsenal player out. Many of you will have noticed that on socials this week. In terms of will I say Levy out? No. Our patrons will know I'm pretty consistent on this in the sense of I think obviously Tottenham have suffered massive underachievement in terms of output of trophies under his tenure, considering the team we had certainly in the late 2010s. But I'm not going to call for something when I know what comes in afterwards might be worse. Now, if there's something on the table that I can look at and think, yeah, that might be better from an ownership perspective, then I'm prepared to have the discussion and potentially go down that route. But until that day comes round, no, because my football club might be in a better position, a worse position afterwards. And he is responsible for a lot of the good that's happened at the football club over the last 20 years. It is also infinitely more difficult to win a trophy now than it was 20 years ago as well. Tag says, hi James, would there be a better time to use assistant manager other than this week? Possibly, yeah, and maybe even probably. But also for those of you, say, with a bench boost, it might be that the other opportunity also equals a bench boost period for you. So for those with the bench boost in hand, yes. What I would say is, like, again, in terms of strategy, this weekend could change a lot. It really could. If we get a few shocks, and we might this weekend, then it really could change the outlook a little bit again. So I don't really want to touch on strategy too much at this moment because an answer I give now might be completely different on Monday. But yeah, I think the opportunity is potentially there. If people have just gone triple captain, I think, well, I've still got slot as a double, I want to attack that. or if I want to go for Unai Emery, I mean, essentially it's going to be them two, I guess, at this point. Then yeah, fine. 25 to 27 is fine. I think in the cases of both, you probably do want to move them on. So whether you go new on Slot now with Emery now, if you're starting from new on it, I think you are looking to chain that into other managers. So you have to factor that into your plans, considering the manoeuvrement around game week 29, which I still think is highly likely to be better for the majority, not all, but the majority of people to run through. Luke Boy 12-3 says, hi James, would you do Isak to Watkins if you have no other route to Watkins? Sorry for last night, mate. It's not your fault, Luke. No, it's no consideration in my thoughts at the moment to make that move personally, but it's also the influence of me. I'm a million up on Isak. I'll certainly want him back in game week 30. I've got to be a little bit more structured as someone who's very light in terms of chips at the moment. So for me, I got to think about the longer term a little bit more. Unai Emery's obviously said he won't be available for the FA Cup tie this weekend on Sunday against Tottenham, but does hope that he'll rejoin training next week. So certainly not one I'd make an early transfer for. Obviously, I get the absolute temptation of putting him in, but it is interesting. I ask people to think about this strongly. Were you considering going Isak to Watkins if it was just a single of Ipswich at home? If you were, cool. But if now, Villa are playing the best team in the league, now I want to get him. Psychologically, double. With the extra fixture, he's the best team in the league at the moment. So if you weren't going to buy him just for Ipswich at home, what's making you think it now? Also, fixtures afterwards, Chelsea at home, Palace away, Brentford away. Don't scream massive hauls. And then they obviously blank 29 and their fixtures are tough after 30. So I think it needs a consciousness that, and it's not to say you shouldn't invest in an Aston Villa player, but if you do, and particularly one that's sort of around about Watkins' value, you may want to move that straight on afterwards. So at the moment, for me, there's absolutely no consideration of going Isak to Watkins. He's not going to get the armband either, is he? He's just going to be a Liverpool player, isn't it? Presumably Salah. Michael Radley says, hi mate, hope you're well. The game aside, how was your time in Liverpool and what's your thoughts on our new Annie Road stand? Well, I was in the Anfield Road last year as well, so the new upper tier is quite imposing. It's high, it's big, and you can actually, in fairness, you can feel the atmosphere above and behind you. You feel a bit quite blocked in there, actually, not in a bad way. Just you can feel the atmosphere behind you as well. So you're much better than it used to be, obviously, as a single tier stand, or even in more recent years. Obviously, I think the development was in the 2000s, where it was a very small upper tier, wasn't it? So yeah, good. Keeps the noise in the ground a little bit better as well, I think. Yeah, good experience up in Liverpool. We went around Matthew Street, is it, where all the Beatles stuff is, and all the music venues and bars and etc. We went there in the afternoon. No one particularly felt like going out and getting drunk afterwards, so it was a quiet evening after the game. But yeah, good city, Liverpool. Also says Michael, also in your opinion, who's the biggest problem at Spurs? If you had to lose one tomorrow, who would you prefer gone, Ange or Levy? Crap. Well, again, with Ange, you can say, well, I'd want this manager or this manager or this manager. With Daniel, what's the solution? What are we looking for here? We don't know. And I understand, I don't have anything against those who are calling for him to go, by the way. I'm not like pro Levy. I just don't see what the solution is necessarily at the moment. So therefore, I'm very reluctant, and it is still very reluctantly, honestly. I would have to say Ange at this moment, but last night was obviously really bad from our perspective. But it is worth saying, and I covered this on a differential show on Patreon today, like Liverpool were great as well, right? And they're so much better in every department at the moment. We massively failed in the midfield area. And the three who played in there last night just were not good enough, couldn't get near Liverpool. You can't go somewhere like Anfield and not keep the ball and expect to do well, basically. So, to answer your question, very reluctantly, Ange, but I don't want him to go. I'm still on side, and I don't think, I expect us to get beat Sunday. I don't think that's going to change. I at least want to kind of see at this stage now where I sit at the end of the season. Also, after this game, we do have 2 free midweeks, right? So a kind of 7-day break to Manchester United, then a 6-day break to Ipswich, and then a 5-day break till we play the Europa League last 16 first leg. I think I've got that right. So there's now a break when we've been 3 days, 4 days, 3 days, 4 days, like pretty much constantly for a couple of months. He does sound like a number of players will be back fit. Let's see if that improves things. If it doesn't, then yeah. I mean, his excuse is obviously the injury problems at the moment. But listen, the one thing I also said on the Patreon pod today was, despite all the injuries we've got, we don't actually have them in terms of the 6 and 8 positions, particularly at the moment. You could say Maddison, it's a left-sided 10. But in terms of Bissouma, Benson, Sarr, all available, and he just wasn't good enough last night. Stephen Hutchinson says, no FPL question. I've watched a lot of George Abbott this season at Notts County. Have you seen much of him, and how good do you think he could be? He's been class for Notts, granted at League Two. Yeah, I know he's done very, very well and has been very well received by the people up there. I've seen a couple of his goals, sort of cracking goal that he scored at Accrington Stanley. Who are they exactly? Roundabouts a month or so ago. And I want to say, I might have this wrong, but I think he was the captain of the under-21 team last season. So he's not one that I think there's been high hopes that he'll break through and become a first-team player at Tottenham. I don't think that's the case. He made a brief debut for his final day of the season at Leeds in 2023. I think, in all due respect, there's a reason why he's gone down to a League Two club rather than a Championship club or a League One club. And it's probably that Tottenham don't have huge expectations for him, but there might be something that's been in it. I do know that he's done really well. There isn't an expectation, as far as I'm aware, that he'll make it at Tottenham. Stephen Hutchinson put a comment in saying, great content as always before I'd even started. I appreciate that, Stephen. Louis says, hi, James. What are your chip plans for the next game week? Assistant manager and Emery looks tasty with 2 home games, including 1 table bonus. Yeah, and the table bonus is against the best team in the league. And in game week 26, it's very unlikely at this stage that he would have a bonus against Chelsea. He's only going to have a bonus against Chelsea if pretty much Villa's double game week is terrible. So, yeah, that's kind of counterproductive. No consideration for Emery from me, I'll be honest. And again, if people believe it and want to do it, it's absolutely fine. It's play it your way, obviously. But I can definitely say Emery is not a consideration for me. If Trent is ruled out, I will consider going Trent, to be honest, probably to Dean Howson, and then maybe going Slot and then chaining it on and looking at it from that perspective. But I think for me, it's probably going to be nothing. I think that's the more likely at the moment. Again, the weekend might well change the outlook for how it looks a little bit further down the line. But at the moment, I think I'll be chipless most likely in game at 25. Michael Radley says, FPL wise, would you be against keeping hold of Jackson for the Leicester and Southampton game? For me, other transfers are priority and team looks strong even with him benched in the next 2. So he's becoming a pest, isn't he? Let's be honest. He's not making any racket in doing it either. So by default, because of the problem situation I've put myself in, he's probably going to stay for me. The one I'm looking at maybe moving him to, and this would involve hits for me, not now, but along the path, is considering Mateta, or I just consider going Mateta and maybe going to play a short in game at 29. That's the one actually I would have my eye on. Palace's fixtures before and a couple of fixtures after the blank are pretty good. So I'd more maybe be looking at that. But I think it's probably most likely that he's going to stick for me at the moment. I think for most people, I mean, if you can go Jackson to Watkins, for most people, that would be very tempting. I also think, Michael, that most people, unlike me and you, don't have him at the moment. And I'd probably prefer that he wasn't sitting there. I've held for Wolves at home, nothing. West Ham at home, nothing. Yeah, it's not been great, has it? All that great XG that it looked like from really early in the season, yeah, it's not delivering, unfortunately. Louis says, should England have a stadium up north to host cup finals instead of having thousands of fans having to travel all the way down to Wembley and back? I mean, sure, Louis, but what if it's like an Arsenal-Chelsea FA Cup final? It's just the opposite anyway, isn't it? So I get it. We've got 2 northern teams in the final again, but it could have been Tottenham and Arsenal, right? It obviously wasn't, but it could have been. So you'd only have the argument the other way, mate. In terms of having a national stadium up north, I mean, if Manchester United do redevelop Old Trafford, it's going to be huge, isn't it? And I'm sure it could get used for games up in the north. The problem is the FA and what they want financially, and where they make the biggest cut is obviously from Wembley, right? They're desperate to have games at Wembley. The agreement when they rebuilt the stadium, I've screamed about this so many times, was the FA Cup semi-finals would be played at Wembley for a minimum of 15 years. We are now 18 years into that agreement. I'm sure most of us would like FA Cup semi-finals to go back to Old Trafford, Anfield, St James's, Villa Park, White Hart Lane, the Emirates, whatever, right? That would be better, wouldn't it? For finals, no, the finals should be at Wembley, but the semi-finals should definitely be somewhere else. FPL Don says, hi James, who would you sell Sarr for up to 6.3 million for a hit? I think I'm going to avoid doublers in favour of game week 29 players. Already have Kluivert, thanks. Bournemouth top of the shop. I think investing in Rodgers is different to kind of what I've spoken about with Watkins, but I think it's probably just a second Bournemouth player would appeal first on. However, if you're looking at taking a hit to move on Ismaila Sarr and you're not sure where you want to go, I wouldn't be doing it, mate. As kind of just mentioned with Mateta, I realise he's been a big letdown, but the fixtures are there. The information on Eze today, again, sounds a little bit concerning. He's not going to play Monday. But it sounds a little bit concerning that this problem he picked up in mid-December is still bothering him. So, I mean, would I be selling Ismaila Sarr for a hit before Everton at home without knowing where I want to go? No, that might be a very fatigued Everton team that plays at Crystal Palace 3 days after a Merseyside derby, right? No, I think I'd be holding. Kanji FPL says, hi James. Hello mate. Matthew Naylor says, thoughts on Gordon and Mateta to Dango Otara and Ollie Watkins if Watkins is confirmed fit. Well, as said, I got eyes on investing in Mateta, not the other way around, mate. So, I mean, I would not recommend selling him at this stage. Again, would you have gone Mateta to Watkins if you just had Ipswich at home? It's not to say he can't go off against Liverpool. I get it. Probability, more expected minutes, all that. But it is still the best team in the league. So no, I wouldn't consider it personally. For Dango Otara, if that's the Bournemouth player that you want to invest in that's absolutely fine. But this also sounds like moves to forcing Watkins. I would prefer just the Gordon to Dango Otara if that's what you want to do. That's fine. Newcastle's fixtures obviously stiffen up now. They go to Manchester City in game week 25. We'll probably begin to think about that final in game week 29 again. Remember the caveat, and it is a very small chance that the Newcastle game could still stay in game week 29. Kanchi's got his question now. Says, I already used my wild card, but I'm wondering how nailed Dango is. Already own Kluivert, but I'm considering Dango versus Semenyo. So again, I mentioned this last week. For me, answering these questions, I am drawn because of my own chip strategy to draw towards the player that's going to be a safer option at the moment. That doesn't mean you should necessarily play it that way. So, for example, if you're thinking of wildcarding not long after game week 29, then I think Utara is perfectly reasonable to go and get. There is the possibility that Utara has just had a little bit of a explosive period, and that could be the end of it. I think Semenyo is second or third for shots in the league. Him, from a minutes perspective, is zero concern. But obviously the one set of midweek fixture, which is game week 27, you're looking at one game a week, so that's not a huge concern for a team that obviously plays to quite a high intensity, and even from that perspective, the game at Tottenham I was going to say game week 28, we've got an FA Cup game in between, so it might even be that would be a rotation. I presume that still they'll play a very strong team at Everton tomorrow. I would go Semenyo of the two. But I also think if you think that money difference between them will be particularly useful, I don't mind it. Evan Nilsson, we think, will probably be back around about the game week 30 period. It could be a little bit later. It could be a little bit earlier. How important is that? You've used your wild card, Kanji. So I think in your circumstance, I'd be going Semenyo. Simon Baker says, James, can I get a timestamp? Yeah, we're about 19 minutes into the video, I think. Possibly a little bit less, maybe. Thinking of selling Mo to get H for 29 and 30. Oh, I presume this is Haaland. Have some value in Mo, but not as much as others. What variance between SP and CP do you think makes most sellable. So that's selling price and current price. Um, I mean, there's a case to do it anyway, right? So let me give you an example. So I'm going to get the game at 29, and it's most likely Haaland's going to be the best captaincy. I think even more so after the cup results this midweek. And I bought Salah, I think, at 12.6. So what, I'm going to lose sort of 0.5, and obviously not going to get that back if I want to reinvest. There's a chance that I just cut, mate. Just cut for a few weeks and just go down the Haaland route and maybe not go back. Because the thing is, once you've gone Haaland, we spoke about this back in sort of like the autumn period. If you'd committed to Haaland, you might just be taking that path for a while. Now, there's things that could change the game between now and then. If Cole Palmer gets injured, then you're probably trying to fit them both in, aren't you, right? But I think once you're hitting that kind of end spell, the value of the player doesn't become so relevant, particularly if you don't intend to go back. Now, to sit there in game week 29 and go, I'm definitely not buying Mo Salah back, it's probably unlikely. It's every chance, obviously, Liverpool will have a double game week in either 33 or 36. You would almost definitively want him for that. But you could just take him on. I think, obviously, the later it is, the less the value plays. So, hypothetically, let's just say it's 13.6 at the time. If I bought him at 12.6 and I want to sell and I'm only getting 13.1, and I know that if I take the choice to sell him, then there's every chance Liverpool might have a double in game week 33, I'm going to want to get back to him. But if I can afford just to lose the 0.5 from my squad and still make it happen, then I'd strongly consider doing it. And that might even be the play that a lot of us decide to take as and when we get there. I don't intend to at the moment. I intend to carry Mo Salah through game week 29 and probably just skip Haaland. But there are definitely things that could have an impact on that. City going out of Champions League is possibly one of them. And as it stands, I find it difficult to foresee they'll beat Real Madrid. Although Madrid have massive problems defensively at the moment going into that tie, the first leg of which is on Tuesday. Next up is Joey Kneecap says, James, thoughts on Liverpool v Spurs? Would be interesting to hear your perspective on both teams' current state and the road ahead. So I pretty much spoke about this for 15-20 minutes on our Patreon podcast today, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. What I would say is Tottenham I've spoken about a bit, so I'll just speak about Liverpool. Outstanding. What they've done, or what Slot's done, and obviously the team, compliments to all of them involved, is refined something where their game management has improved massively, even from the exceptional Jurgen Klopp teams when they were even at their best. I think their game management is now better than it's ever been. And there's possibly a big thing to be said about the amount of experience that they've got in that team now with, Van Dijk, Salah, and plenty of others, right? They've not had much churn within the squad over the last couple of years. They didn't buy anyone this summer. I've not bought anyone in the window, not in terms of specifically truly impacting their best 11 in any case. The one thing that's really changed is obviously Slot's introduction of Gravenberch, who was superb last night. Just absolutely couldn't get near him. And most Liverpool players were really good. I think they now look a much tougher team to beat than they have done in the past. And they've got much more control and authority about what they're doing. I think there's a real air of belief. You don't feel again, it might have been influenced how my team played last night, but no fear, I think, patience. Once they went 1-0 up, they knew they'd win the game. It was a case of waiting for their moments, not going too hard too soon. I mean, dominated from start to finish, didn't they? In terms of individuals, nothing on Salah, Gakpo and the like I haven't already said on other fantasies podcasts, but the one that really stood out to me last night was Conor Bradley. And I'll repeat what I said on the Patreon podcast, that Liverpool, should Trent go, Liverpool do not need to buy a Trent replacement. They've already got it. He is absolutely good enough to become their first choice right back. I've zero doubt about that. He's a phenomenal athlete, much better technically than I thought he was. He's got everything that you would want in a modern day fullback. So what Liverpool would need to look for in the summer is someone as an understudy for Bradley, because the replacement for Trent is already there. He would be, if someone's asked me a question now and said, who do you think would be an FPL asset that we will all be interested in game week 1 this season that no one's interested in now, that's probably name number 1 is Conor Bradley. Because can they price him up at 6 million next year? I don't know, push about at 5.5. I mean, 5.5 would be pretty interested, wouldn't you? So there you go. There's your first tip for the 25-26 season. But Liverpool, very good, thoroughly deserving winners. And I repeat what I said on socials last night. Like, you know, if you're watching, you're listening, you're a Liverpool or Newcastle fan, you deserved your victories this week. And the very best of luck in the final. Flella Junk says, James, what do you think of Moyes to slot for 25, but the expense of Trent out? So Trent out, if he is, and obviously sounds like there's every chance he'll play against Everton, but Trent being out is the sort of thing that obviously would make me consider using the assistant manager myself. Already mentioned it. Trent to Howson probably for me, and then it opens the door for slot should I decide that's what I want to do. But moving from Moyes to slot, I guess if those who went Moyes were looking to move it on to Emery or Silva or Postecoglou if they doubled, which obviously won't. So I guess a lot of Moyes owners are probably going to move on to Emery, and I completely understand that. My point would be that I was going to say, why didn't you go slot in the first place? Obviously, Trent is a very good reason behind that. But now, if you felt that strongly about it, should it have just been slot in the first place, even still, anyway? Moyes to slot. I guess if he is out and you're looking at the third Liverpool, yeah, I also think, what's the chance at this stage of Trent missing Everton, Wolves and Villa as we stand? It doesn't appear that way, does it? I think there's a chance that he don't play both in the double anyway, as it is, even if he is available. I don't know. I think if you took the Moyes path, I would probably continue towards the Emery path, I think, personally. Voshon Ramkaran says, hi James, I was just out in London town this past week from America. Too junk to have comprehended 2 double game week announcements and didn't play the assistant manager chip. What should I do now? Listen to Monday's Chip Strategy podcast. Hanny says, hi James, who would you bench? Wood, Bumo or Isak? I mean, firstly, it's a week away. So I wouldn't even, one of them could get injured over the weekend, right? Wood, bench or Isak? Wood, Bumo or Isak? Bumo at West Ham, Wood at Fulham, Isak at City. Blimey. I get it. There's every chance to, who's your rate for attacker? I get it. There are going to be people who've got like Rodgers and Clivert, and they're like, I'm not benching either of them this week. I get it. Some people are going to have a rough week. Can you bench boost? It's worth a consideration for some, I would say. People should look, if the people are in this sort of dilemma, people should look at the rest of what they've got. Not Isak would be my feeling at this moment. I would definitely play Isak of the 3. That would be my first feeling at the moment. Even though paper it's the toughest fixture. I think maybe with West Ham obviously kind of in a back 5 at the moment. I think arguably Bumo. God, that's a nightmare, isn't it? King of Mandalore says, thoughts on buying Trent back in 27 once assistant manager's gone. Bench in 29 for the good fixtures directly after, then wildcard 31, 32. So you potentially, what you want to get him back in for the 3 home games, Newcastle, Southampton, Everton, 27, 28, 30. I mean, I've got Trent. If I take him out, I'll commit to that. And I don't think I'll be going back, not till at least after game week 29 anyway. I just wouldn't have the flexibility to be able to do that if I took him out. That'd be it. He's gone. Okay, maybe see you in game week 30, mate. Wouldn't be before that. So if he was out, would I consider, yes, maybe going on a slot with a chip? But again, I wouldn't be going to Trent as quickly as you're suggesting. You might have more flexibility for that. I wouldn't. So it would be a no in terms of going back. Just Davis says, hello, Jimbo. I know it's early, but wench one of Semenyo, Dango, Mateta. Cheers, and everyone smash alike. Probably with reluctance, Utara, Josh. Adam Warner says, hi, James. Do you think there's a risk to Rodgers' place in the Villa team with Rashford and Asensio now in the Villa squad? Or is he still nailed on for both fixtures in game week 25? I don't think you could say he's absolutely nailed on. What you got to remember is as well. So, and we don't know the answer to this yet, right? So Villa play obviously Ipswich at home on the Saturday. Liverpool at home was going to be the Wednesday. Chelsea at home on the Saturday. And then it's going to be Champions League away game in the midweek afterwards. Now, what day that is could have a big bearing, right? Because Villa could have Liverpool at home, Chelsea at home, and then Champions League away game on a Tuesday. Well, they're all liable for some rotation, I would suggest, under that circumstance. Particularly when you've got people like Daniel Marlon, has not been added to Aston Villa's Champions League squad today. So he's definitely getting plenty of minutes in the Premier League, you would think, from that perspective. They've just invested and bought that player. So under that circumstance, any Villa player, offensively at least, I think you'd have a little bit of concern for. There's no doubt in my mind that Rodgers is first choice for Aston Villa. Absolutely none. And it will stay that way. Whenever we've doubted it this year, Unai Emery's always gone to that. And quite often he's played for 90-odd minutes, right? But yeah, if the Champions League game's Tuesday, which you will know, you should know before deadline at 25, that's not helpful. Because whatever you do buy for 25, you're not keeping it for 26? Or is it going to something else? I mean, this would be an example, right? Say someone's going, I'm downgrade Gordon this week. Oh, I'll go Rodgers or Kluivert. Okay. Right. So if you were thinking, well, I'll go Rodgers for 1 and then I'll go on to Kluivert in 26. Honestly, I wouldn't bother. I'd just go straight to Kluivert. But I don't think those of us who are on Rodgers as owners should not be concerned. But it might be that, I might be moving him on as quickly as 26. That is a possibility. Next up is FPL Chat. Says, hi mate, what's your thoughts on transferring in Bowen this week for the long term? Also want to bring in Semenyo and Rodgers this week, but that would be a -8. All I'd say on something like Bowen is we've got something new that's about to happen with West Ham, and we don't know what that looks like yet. And that's Evan Ferguson. We don't know what that looks like yet. So Evan Ferguson presumably is going to take over as the 9. So Bowen plays in a wider area, we would presume, moving forward, or at least a slightly deeper area once Evan Ferguson's up to speed. That may not be straight away. And I do think Potter's somewhat handicapped in the moment in having to play a back 3 because West Ham just don't have enough attacking players available at the moment. That may change. Suddenly, if you've got Ferguson and you've got Kudus, Paquetá, Bowen, right, now it's very conceivable to play a back 4, isn't it? Somerville, we know, is going to be out till April now. So I would be keen to see that first before I invested. They also go to Arsenal in game week 26. That just feels quite ugly. So game week 27, for me, I might have another look at him. That gives me a couple of games to kind of assess what might be happening now. For me, at this moment, it would be a no, but I don't mind it as a differential. Jared Bowen is proven in this league and will be a good fantasy asset, I'm sure, but I wouldn't be diving in there till I've seen a little bit more yet, because he can go cold. We saw that sort of in the winter period last year. We went a long period without returns, right? Next up is Darren Jenkins says, hi James, would you bring in Mateta for Wood this week? Looking to free hit 29. Bit low to say sell Chris Wood after somebody advice over the last couple of weeks, which I don't regret. But you're saying sell Mateta forward. Hang on. Do you know what, Darren? I read that and I assumed you were talking about going Wood to Mateta. No, I wouldn't. No. And I just said, like, if it's on the horizon for me as Jackson, I'll be going Mateta before I go Wood. Regrets, I might have some more, but that's what I would be doing. Hanny says, hi James, isn't it sensible to sell unless I deem that I need Wood for 29? So Wood certainly has that in his pocket as a favour, the extra fixture 29. But you are saying bring in Mateta for Wood. Sorry, I've misread that. Mateta for Wood this week. Yeah, I don't mind, mate. Particularly if you are committed to free hitting 29. I mean, therefore, Wood's fixtures is Fulham, Newcastle, Arsenal, Manchester City, Manchester United, Aston Villa. Quite bleak, that. It's the Ipswich game 29 that will still massively appeal. Sorry. Hanny says, hi James, isn't it sensible to sell Trent and activate the assistant manager on slot? If yes, who would be assistant manager in 26 and 27? Or would you play it in different weeks? So why would it be sensible then if you're not sure where you're going to go? And this is it. Like, if I end up going down that route, I don't know at this stage. I think 26 looks shite. I really do. I know a lot of slot people are going to move that on to someone else in 26. What is it? Van Nistelrooy against Brentford. We're searching for a bonus. What is it? Ipswich against Tottenham's probably not likely to be a bonus, I don't think. It might be. It seems very unlikely at this moment, I think. What else are we looking at? Oh, I'm going to go Hertzler at Southampton. That went well in their last away game. All right. You're going to go Juric against Brighton? Yeah, I'm going Pep against Liverpool. Okay, so we just keep chasing bonuses against the best team in the league. Don't love it, man. Don't love it at all, really. And it's that. I think it's the biggest off-putter for me. And I think that's why most likely for me, it probably won't. Even if Trent was ruled out, I don't think I would. To be honest, if I knew definitively, if say next week Slot said, hey, yeah, do you know what? He's not right. He's going to miss 3 or 4 weeks. I generally would consider buying Connor Bradley. Next up is Tanky. Says, I'm on Slot, Salah, Trent, and Watkins, Rodgers and Semenya with 3 free transfers. Any good punts I could go, or just a simple roll will do. You told me half your team, Tanky. I don't know what the rest of the team. I presume you're asking me in terms of assets from Bournemouth, Villa, Liverpool. So Howson is my preference defensively. I know Kirk is going to get a lot of traction. Semenyo, Cliver, and Utara all fine. Punts for Liverpool. It's not going to be any different to what we was discussing last week unless Trent is out, right? Villa, wouldn't consider anyone other than Watkins or Rodgers personally, unless I saw something on Sunday that made me think, oh yes, let's have a look at Marcus Rashford or Marco Asensio. But at this moment, no. I've just got Rodgers. I have no intention to add another Villa player as it stands. To be honest, I would maybe be as likely to buy Matthias Tell than Asensio or Rodgers, because I mean he's going to play OOP for Tottenham, and they do play in 29. So for me, holding a longer term, but I also need to see more from him than what I saw last night. That's not criticism of him last night because he was playing against 2 outstanding centre backs, right? And he didn't have much support from his teammates, but he looks lively, Matthias Tell. Next up, we've got another Matty. It's Matty H. Says, hi, James. Is the fear of being 50 plus points behind people who have activated the assistant manager enough to activate this week? Triple captain Salah in 24, struggling to choose the right path. I mean, I won't make a choice of path for next week until these FA Cup fixtures are gone, Matty, and I can have a little look further down the line. Again, the stuff might change. There's a lot of Premier League teams away this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if the projections move again. So nothing committed to, but as I've kind of said, I don't really feel committed to having to go down the assistant manager. How are you? What is it that you're concerned about? Are you 50 points behind someone in a mini league, or are you concerned that you're going to be behind 50 points behind someone who activates the assistant manager? Well, you can activate it at a different point and then get ahead. Shiver19 says, hi James, how do you predict City's games versus Newcastle and Liverpool will go? Thinking of transferring out Isak, Gordon, Diaz, Gakpo, but City have looked vulnerable recently. So we're doing City Newcastle Clash of Correspondence. It'll be out for you on Tuesday next week with Johnny Pringle and Simon Bibby. So I would suggest that will probably help you quite a bit. And I thought that would be important because Newcastle will be a real topic in terms of should they be sold. I said earlier in the week that I thought if Newcastle came through this week well and in a good frame of mind, I thought they would go to City and win. It's obviously since then has been confirmed Joel Linton is out. That's a blow because as you've seen the other night, it caused a little bit more restriction in terms of what they can be with their aggressiveness in midfield. And, it worked out absolutely fine for them against Arsenal, and Eddie Howe was absolutely right with his tactical switch. But I do think, the power of Joel Linton really comes into play in a fixture like that, both with and without the ball. So that's a little bit of a miss. I'm keen to see what Sai and other Newcastle fans think after this weekend in terms of how they might manage. But I think largely it's obviously been really positive so far this week. They'll probably pick a little mix and match team tomorrow night that might give us a little bit more clues into next week. But I wouldn't feel as strongly about Newcastle winning next week as I had done earlier in the week because of Joel Linton's injury, essentially. Quite clearly part of their best 11. Gordon could go for me. Isak, as I've said, is very unlikely to move for me. There is a value answer in that. I'm $1 million up. Gakpo, I probably feel like I need to deal with Jackson more. Diaz, I could understand moving on, but not in 25, right? This is going to be afterwards. Are you asking because you want to invest in a City player, or because obviously I'm guessing because you got Newcastle against City this week and Liverpool against City the week after? I would not fear owning attacking players against City. That's the bottom line, what I would say ultimately, but it doesn't mean you can't move on to other opportunities. Roseanne says Jackson to Watkins for -4. I don't think that's going to be on the table for me, mate. If he's past fit, I can totally understand people wanting to make that move, though. Matthew Locke says, yes, James, happy Friday, mate. Have a good weekend, you too. Hanny says, who would you sell Rodgers for in 26 or 27 if you have Clivert? He's asking about Amad Diallo, Dangutara, Semenyo, someone else. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised people say Ismail Assar, right? No, I'm joking. I don't mean that. I'd say an unlikely name to throw into the hat. Mikael Damsgaard. I was really impressed with, actually, for Brentford against my team last week. He was a real cheap enabler, but I probably wouldn't buy him over any of the other players that you mentioned. Obviously, if you can go to Matthias Tell, he's got to be considered. Right now, Tottenham are going to have these breaks. It's going to be helpful. He is almost certainly going to play up front in forthcoming games as long as he doesn't get injured on Sunday. Man United and Ipswich next, playing in the blank. I mean, if he hits the ground running and does really, really well between now and Solanke coming back, does he stay there? I guess there's a risk for me in the sense that we think Solanke will be available before the blank. But some good fixtures afterwards. He could certainly play in a wider role. I think he's a name. I mean, I'm surprised no one's mentioned him yet on the stream. I'm sure someone has later in the questions. But he's certainly a name that's under consideration for me. So there's an extra name for you, Hanny. Daniel Cullerton says, what were your thoughts on the Anfield atmosphere on the night game, mate? Excuse me. Yeah, look, the atmosphere was good. Not the best atmosphere I experienced at Anfield. That would probably be FA Cup quarter final 1995. But it was good. Yeah, Liverpool people got really behind their team last night. The atmosphere from the Tottenham fans was crap last night. I said that on the Patreon pod earlier. We did have a bit more of a discussion about atmosphere on our Patreon podcast today, me and Clayton. And I speak highly of the Anfield atmosphere last night. It was good. I think circumstance, chasing the game, needing to win, added to it somewhat. But it's not the best in this league. The best atmosphere in this league, I think, as many people are saying again on Wednesday night, is at St James's Park. Next up is Tag. What's the largest animal you can throw over a crossbar? Me? Ladybird? That'd fly away, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be able to throw a ladybird over. This is a horrible question. Thinking about it more. Oh, hamster. Something like that, probably. I'm only little, don't forget that. Finley Scanlon says, I have Arseman free hit and wild card. Should I use assistant manager now or wait for later in the season? This is a Monday answer for me. I want to have a look at it a bit more. I haven't decided. So I'm only bullshitting if I give you one answer and then do something different, right? JP says, did Ange get the lineup wrong versus Liverpool? Son, Bissouma and Bentancur just didn't have the legs to press or keep up with Liverpool pace. Spence was the only one who left the pitch with his head up high. I don't think people were too disappointed when they saw the lineup last night, so I think it would be a hindsight answer. They were bad in midfield, as I already discussed. Son, yeah, done it to death. Don't need to say anything else. But yeah, we can be hindsighty about these things, mate. So I've nothing really to add on that. David James Whiteway says, not many will, but thinking of assistant manager 33 to 36 to get 2 times doubles. Yeah, so just consider, if you're using it later, and we'll cover this again in more detail Monday, you might need to go 31 to 33 or 35 to 37 or 36 to 38 because you may need to manipulate around game week 34 particularly. JP says, how does anyone realistically beat Liverpool? Is it just low block and counter? They also have the best squad depth. What are your thoughts? I mean, Bournemouth could have done it last week, mate. So, yeah, I don't think... what I did realise last night was, yeah, they're better than maybe I've been giving them credit so far this season. Not that I haven't been giving them credit, but just like, yeah, okay, they're really powering. They're very good. But they can be beaten. Absolutely. You need to defend well, clearly, because I think against these teams it can be very, very difficult to stop them having opportunities. You take an example like Newcastle, who Obviously, yeah, okay, a bit deeper, counter-attacking players like Gordon, Isak. They had some success with that in the league game back in December. Actually, Newcastle really went for it that night in that league game at St James's Park. City could kick the ball for fun against them. Despite how critical I've been about them, it's possible. They're not unbeatable, mate. Absolutely not. But you've got to be very good to do it. Murphy says, hey, James, currently benching Gordon, probably between him or Wood currently. What would your priority be there? I might even sell Gordon for a Villa mid, but no standouts, and I already own Rodgers. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, if I had to lock in my team for this week now, Murphy, I would be benching Gordon personally. I don't own Wood, but if I did, I'd play Wood over him. And as it stands, I'd have the team bust with Jackson in the team over him. So, yeah, there you go. Make of that what you will. Adam says, give us your Premier League top six in order, James. Now the window is shut. Top six in order. You have to think Liverpool are going to win it, I think, at this stage. Arsenal second. That's definitely going to be the top two. I wonder if Newcastle might be distracted a little bit in forthcoming games. City third with their running, if they were out the Champions League as well, probably makes sense. I think Newcastle just ahead of Chelsea personally, and then Forest sixth, which is harsh. What I'd say as a caveat that with Forest is, I think the next four are really tough for them, and I've said this numerous times. I think if Forest come out of the Manchester City game in game week 28 and they're in the top five, I think they'll do it. But I probably would just have them at sixth at the moment. And I think the bookies would probably, I might be wrong, but I think they would probably have it similar. Roseanne, I imagine Manchester United will beat Leicester tonight. That's not like a wild prediction, is it? Shakip says, hi, James. Thanks for those with all chips other than the assistant manager. What is the potential advantage of not free hitting game week 29? Decent chance of expecting 3 double game weeks to use bench boost, triple captain, and free hit. Yeah, the biggest reason, again, we'll cover it on more on Monday, but I'd also recommend the first chip strategy pod we did a few weeks ago. Chips in the Arsemen Volume 1. It's the manipulation around 33, 34. So you can look at doubles, but yeah, 34 is potentially going to be a big headache, mate. So that's the biggest reason not the free hit in 29 is how you get around 33 and 34. Emma23 says, if there's no confirmation on Watkins, would you take Enzo out for Dango Utara? Knowing I want Enzo for the Southampton and following game. Cheers, James. I would say, Emma, in all likelihood, it's a little bit different to the one someone was asking about Trent earlier. And going back, if you cut Enzo Fernandez, you'll cut Enzo Fernandez, won't you? I probably would not hold that player just for the Southampton Leicester fixtures. I would move that on. If I had Jackson and he was at that value and in midfield, I'd move him on. I don't have enough places I'm desperate to go to up front that's going to definitively be better for me and cover 29 and before and afterwards. In the midfield area, lots of options. Probably be moving that on personally. Joey B93G says, evening, James. Gordon to Cliver for -5. That's particularly interesting. Obviously means -4. Better upcoming fixtures in the game in 29. For a hit, no. From me. Nope. I think I get the attacking of Southampton. That's not wrong in any way. I just think very quietly, since that Brentford game, just have a second look at them. They've been a bit better. They got a result that maybe they didn't deserve last week, but they were very unlucky not to win at Manchester United. So, for a hit, when City is so vulnerable running backwards and that's where the space will be for Gordon, I don't think so, personally. For free, I've not got a reason to tell you not to, and I might do that exact move, Joey. For a hit, it's a no from me. JP says, do I sell Wood to Watkins if he's fit for the double game week? I have Rodgers already and will likely get Emery from Moyes on my assistant manager. Is it overkill to get Watkins? Of course it's not overkill, mate. You got great forward, potential double game week. I'd just ask you to go back and ask yourself, would you have gone Wood to Watkins this week if Liverpool had lost last night? Would you? Now, I guess under that circumstance, you'd been considering Jimenez probably, I would guess, as an alternative. But if it was just Ipswich at home, would you make the move? Now, if the answer is yes, crack on, because the double makes it even better. But I'd give that some thought, mate. Owen Wilson says, if Ange goes out before the semis in both Europe and FA Cup and you finish bottom half, well, we're definitely finishing bottom half, mate. And stupidly, I've managed to lose the question. Sorry. If Ange goes out before the semis in both Europa and FA Cup and you finish bottom half in the Prem, do you think he gets another season? I think it's context, right? So how are we performing? Do the players come back fit? What's the plans for the summer? Have they already kind of locked in some of the budget in terms of tell? I don't think it's quite black and white like that. And it will depend a lot on the fan base and how the fans feel. Before the game, last night, they were singing his name again on the concourses. Not all, but like the little bits and pieces before the game. So there's still enough of a backing there for him, mate. So I think it's context. You could look at it now and go, yeah, Tottenham. I mean, Tottenham probably lose Sunday, right? There's every chance we're going to have a really difficult last 16 Europa game, right? So it's very conceivable we're going to be out of these competitions before we even get to the blank, right? And then season's dead. It's finished because we ain't going to finish top half, mate. We're also very unlikely to get dragged back into trouble. So it's context. How does that team then look if it's got one game a week and it's got its strongest team on the pitch for the rest of the season? Do you then have hope going into next season? I spoke a lot last season about putting kind of nothing in terms of the pressure of the result and enjoying it, and then just being happy at the end of the season that you can see progress. We didn't finish last season great, but there was no pressure on the results last year. This year, obviously, there was, right? Circumstances happened that pretty much there was no chance over this period. Reality, right? Anyone who's watched the game last night can see that. I don't think anyone else comes in. They might set it up a bit differently, but I don't think anybody else prevents that Tottenham team from not getting smashed to pieces at Liverpool last night under the circumstance of how they played, because I will keep screaming it from the rooftops. Those players in the midfield areas and the attacking players are not good enough. Matthias Tell's just been added. He might be, right? Not good for all the problems we had defensively. I'll discuss this on our Patreon pod today. Romero and Van der Ven playing last night specifically wouldn't have made an ounce of difference because they couldn't keep the ball further up the pitch. So until Tottenham improve that area of the pitch, I don't think massively going anywhere. Next up is Rich Connor. I agree Carragher is being told to go over the top. I don't think necessarily he is. I think he knows what works. And I think it's not just him, just for clarity, right? It's, Neville's the same, and I think plenty of other guys. Jamie Redknapp, I'm not seeing it, but apparently had a rant last night as well. They know what clicks for them once that game's finished. Shaka Waka Laka Laka Ya Ya says, hello mate, love your content, but I never get to catch you live. Just wanted to take the chance to say thank you for the content and congrats on a great FPL season so far. Top man. Cheers, mate. That's very nice of you, mate. I'm gonna do, I can see 5 more on my screen and it's 6:57 already, so I'm gonna do 5 more. I'm going to cut it there for the evening, guys. This person's sorry, your name is in different letters that I don't understand. Says, do you think those who play triple captain this game week will play assistant manager in 25 are the real winners given the points Salah triple captain has already? Also, for me, who didn't play a chip, would you play triple captain or assistant manager in 25? Triple captain for me. Again, I haven't decided what I'm doing myself, right? So again, I don't really want to give you one answer and then do something else. But the game week's not finished. What if Salah blanks and Liverpool go and win 5-0? It's very unlikely. There was this one time, people might remember, this 9-0 game where Salah didn't get a single attack in return. What if that happens? It obviously isn't in a Merseyside derby. But if it did, then Salah triple captain has won. Game week's not finished, mate. Maybe. But then if they had to manoeuvre transfers in a different way, there's that cost effect to it. Let's analyse that after the game week's finish. And also how other assistant managers do later in the season, right? Because you can say, oh, I've gone triple captain Salah. You might go assistant manager later in the season that falls on its arse, right? Craig Meredith says, hi, James. Somehow got Pickford and Raya. Which to sell and who for to free up money? So obviously both cover you game week 29 now. I'm trying to think logically. Chance of Arsenal blanking in 34 again. If you've no chips, Arsenal are more likely to play in 34 than Everton as it stands at the moment. Like, to be honest, if you're without a free hit chip, for example, then that sort of thing would influence it to say keep Raya. Honestly, it would go that far, I think. Otherwise, Probably pretty close with the value involved. But I do think once we hit 30, I think people may want treble Arsenal, and therefore, by definition, at the moment, you think, well, that's probably going to be double defence, isn't it? So, good run for Pickford as well, though. I think you may want to go Pickford to Raya in 30. I think of the two, having landed there, I'd possibly move Pickford on, but I wouldn't like rush unless you need to do it for money. Gareth Bridges says, hi mate, delighted I can catch you live from Canada. Thank you, Gareth. Welcome to the stream. Owen Wilson says, Villa midfielders forwards, you would say right now, 90% plus chance of starting both in a double. If Villa play on the Tuesday in the Champions League after the Chelsea game in 26, then none. As it stands, without knowing, probably Rodgers and Watkins, mate. Sunday, I'll be at Villa Park Sunday, right? So I'm going to see Asensio and Rashford probably start and get a better understanding from there, right? Although how much we should judge fantasy assets after they played Tottenham is debatable. Last one is from KP. He says, hi, James. Contemplating my assistant managership this week on slot, but would have to sell Trent. I was thinking Kirkes house and thoughts. I've covered this plenty over the last couple of weeks, KP. I think Milos Kirkes would be a great asset for anyone who goes and buys, but I prefer the saving on Dean Howson, mate. I'll leave it there. Thanks very much, guys. For those, I know there's a lot of you have not got through your questions. If you've got a question that doesn't cover something that's been on the stream, feel free to tag me on Twitter or on Blue Sky, and I will happily answer your question there. Content next week. I'd already mentioned one clash of correspondence: Man City versus Newcastle. Johnny Pringle, Simon Bibby. We're also scheduled to have Leicester versus Arsenal with Sam Martin and Adam Pritchard. I say scheduled at this moment. That is the plan. Clayton and James show Wednesday. Ask James next Friday, as I said at the top. He's probably likely to be early morning, probably about 9:30 a.m. next week, because it is a Friday deadline. And as promised, Chip Strategy podcast with myself and Suj following the FA Cup games this weekend. That'll be on Monday. We do believe at the moment the draw is going to be Monday night. So if anything then changes again Monday night, me and Clayton will discuss it on the Clayton and James show on Wednesday. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. From Basic T, you can have no ads, access to Slack and my planner from Basic Plus, all the podcasts from Intermediate Plus, and all the additional advanced tier video content, obviously at advanced level as well. And if you just want to support the show for free and you want to try before you buy, we've already released the best bits, a little 20-minute video of some of the stuff we do on Patreon for this past week to give you a sort of flavour of the stuff that we do. But just leaves me to say, for those watching live or on repeat, smash a like, hit the sub button. For those listening to the audio, a 5-star review goes a really, really long way. If your team's playing in the FA Cup, very best of luck this weekend. And for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, Mad Child.